right, this is the Weekend Extra. This is Pastor Nate, and I'm with Pastor Josh.
What's up?
Awesome job tonight, kicking things off as we move towards the new year. And so we wrapped up a series called Moments of Wonder. It's been the last several weeks, been exciting, and focusing in on Jesus and kind of finding kind of connection to his story and everything there. I know in my life personally, and you touch on this, kind of the heart of a servant, and just how a lot of times it's counterintuitive to think that like I want to exalt myself or it's just to serve myself. But when we serve Christ, we're actually approaching that in humility. And as we humble ourselves to like being a servant as Christ did, like Christ exalts us in that. And it's nothing that we're doing. Like we're not trying to exalt ourselves. We're actually trying to like follow his lead and be a servant.
Right.
And it's always fascinated me that like time and time again in Scripture, you see like that idea that
God uses nobodies, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he does something that's completely backwards. The people who you expect to have all the power, control, fame, God doesn't really lift those people up. Instead, he finds people like David, or he finds people who are nameless or faceless, and does incredible things that make a huge difference in his plan and his purpose.
I love that. Like God who, like humble yourself and Christ will exalt you. I think it's 1 Peter 5, but it's just that idea. So I love just hearing that again. And I think it's just tying faithfulness and tying humility to like the heart of a servant. And I don't know, sometimes I think you did a great job of making that simple. And like, it's the small things, like it's that step of faith. It's that being faithful in the little things. And I really appreciate that. So I think we were kind of chatting before, and I think one of the ideas that, like you were using this illustration about being a runner and training for the half marathon, and the idea of like so many times it's easy to just get focused on the accomplishment and that one moment at the end of the race, but instead of that whole journey and process of kind of walking right and kind of leading to that point. So I thought, why don't we talk a little bit about that? So for you, I don't know, like if you were thinking about, like, I think you said focusing more about like not what you're accomplishing, but who you're becoming.
Yeah.
Well, what else would you say to kind of that journey, or just kind of lay out for us maybe in some just,
So one of the first places that I was kind of introduced to some of that, rather than focusing on the goal and what we do, more focus on who we're being formed into. And one of the first places I heard it was a guy named Jeff Vanderstelt. He, I was at a conference with him, and he was saying, we're not human doings, we're human beings. And he was really emphasizing the place of identity in why we do what we do, and helping to draw us back to that. Those are actually really significant things that are at the heart of God and what Jesus Christ put on display for us, like we were talking about, through his humble life and his obedience. And so what the motive was way more about was, I think it's easy for us, especially I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, or type A. You just want to get stuff done. I think it's easy to feel like that's what your life sums up to, and maybe even God views it that way. But really, he cares more about us and who we're being formed into, especially as we walk with him. Probably the most recent way that I found helpful to kind of unpack this was I was reading a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's by a guy named John Mark Comer. So I'd recommend it. And what's super fascinating in the book is he takes this passage. I'll read it for us. It's in Matthew 11, and I wanted to get to this in the sermon, but we didn't have time. But he says, this is Jesus speaking in Matthew 11. He says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And so this, Nate, like the idea of being yoked is like very agricultural, like which is in Jesus' context. They would get that like an ox being yoked to another ox, and how they would walk in step. And an animal that was new at that had to learn how to walk in step with the animal who's experienced at it. And that's what Jesus kind of inviting us into. He's saying, hey, if you're weary and burdened with the way that you've been doing life, the pace or the way in which you've been going about it, why don't you come walk alongside me? Because my yoke, my way is easy and it's light. And it'll actually, he says it twice, it will give you rest. And I think that's the whole point of the becoming a runner versus running a marathon or whatever illustration, is that Jesus isn't just giving us a new set of lists of stuff to do. He's saying, I want to give you an entirely new way of living.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we miss the gap sometimes, and why we get discouraged and anxious and frustrated, is because we say we're following Jesus, or that we're Christians, and we really haven't changed anything about our life. Not that we have to change things about our life to be Christians, because it's all Jesus. But the fact that he lived an obedient life, he lived a humble life, and he's saying, hey, come learn to do life the way I did it.
Yeah.
He's actually inviting us into the way that we were actually meant to live, in a way that was light, easy, and resting
That's
in our
awesome.
Father. Yeah.
I had a friend, I was talking with him, and we were in between Christmas programs and stuff, and he made a comment about how the last couple of years of his life, it's almost like he's had Jesus in his back pocket, and he's been kind of doing Christian stuff, going to church, but like not actually synced up and connected. You know, like everything's fine, and I'll pull Jesus out a little bit when I'm kind of missing him, or it's that thing I think I should do, but it's not like this yoked connection of relationship, and
that's,
that we're on the journey together, you know.
Yeah.
So I just think it's awesome.
And I think that's what's been so cool about this series, is that moment of wonder, is that it's really showing us that Jesus isn't something that can be compartmentalized, that we just bring out in really tough moments, or just in even things that we deem as spiritual or church related. But really, it's something that we become. It's a transforming thing. And I mean, we get to see that all the time, right? In life groups and in adult ministry, like just as people are discipled and become disciples, their lives are following more in step with who Jesus was. And I think that's what gets us excited around here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool, man. Been a great series. Thanks for a great message tonight. And I would encourage you, if you are just kind of tuning in tonight, or to this message in particular, I'd encourage you to jump back and check out some of the other conversations with this Moments of Wonder. It's been a terrific kind of season here, just working through these conversations. So it's a weekend extra, Nate and Josh, and hopefully we'll talk to you guys soon. Later.